Well, howdy. This is still Cindy, Tea and Gardener. Kind of look a little different this evening than I have been. Yesterday I finally got my hair cut. Been meaning to all summer and just hadn't got around to it. And then, I don't know how long, I guess since I started getting gray hair, my daughter had asked me, "Mama, let me color your gray. Let me color your gray." Well, she asked again yesterday and she said, "You're just too young to have such gray hair, Mama." So I let her. I let her pick out the color and everything. So, kind of look a little different this evening, but that's okay. Change is good. Change can be very good. Got me today thinking on how sometimes we judge people by their outward appearance, and we just look at people and say, not too sure I want to hang out with them or associate with them. And we will judge them based upon how they look. And sometimes I think we miss out on some of the best friends that we could have, or somebody who could really bless our life, because we snapped to judgment based on what we saw. And then there's times when you say, "Oh, they have to be good," or this situation, this has to be a good thing, or because it looks good. Well, not everything that looks good is good. Kind of reminds me of the bush we have on the corner of the house, the cranberry bush. The berries on it looks really good, and they look like they would taste really good. They taste really horrible, and you can't look at them and go, "Oh, that berry looks so good, let me try it." I don't advise it. Even my son-in-law learned those berries are not very good. And sometimes I think we miss out on some of God's greatest blessings because we look at it with our physical eyes and think, "Oh, that's got to be good." Brett was telling me today, our beans were making a comeback. And I'm like, no way. They were dead and dying. But they're starting to put more beans on. And I remember just a few weeks ago, I was out there picking beans, and I was not very happy when all the beans were down on the bottom and you had to bend over and pick them beans. And Brett kept telling me, goes, "Honey, don't overlook them. You got to look at it like a book. Turn the page. Lift that leaf up and you'll have a handful." Now remember, I'm still learning how to do this stuff. And so I'm picking it. And then all of a sudden the beans grew up and they were right here at my eye level. And I was like, "Oh yeah, finally I can pick beans without having to bend over and break my back." And then I got a lesson one day when I went out to pick the beans, and the eye level didn't have a lot of beans on it. The guy was kind of like, "Why don't you look down?" I'm like, "There can't be no beans down here. All the leaves are yellow and they look old and gross and wore out." And I thought, well, Brett did tell me there was beans out here to be picked, so I'll look. And I got to looking. And behind all those, what I thought didn't look too good leaves, I picked, I can't remember how many quarts of beans we put up from looking at what I thought didn't look good, or what I thought was already over and done. And the other day I told Brett, I was like, "Those beans, I haven't seen anything on them, so I guess it's time for you to pull them up and go plant something else in that place." But he told me today, he said, "Well, I was about ready to pull them up, but there's more beans growing." And it hits me. Just because we give up on something doesn't mean God's done with it. See, I've said from the beginning that we started this garden, my husband's always told me this was something God has blessed us with. He doesn't always say, "Hey, my husband will tell you he knows it all about gardening. He just knows what the Lord's blessed him with. And I'm trying to learn. So I know what my husband showed me. But at the same time, I'm also learning to see what God has in it. And God has used these beans to show me that not everything is what you think they are. Don't give up on things just because they don't look the way you think it should look. At the time when I picked all those beans, God gave me this word, and His word's the same thing. Even though I've read His scriptures several times, don't always give up on the ones I've always saw and take for granted that, oh, that's just the Old Testament, or, oh, I've read that book a bunch of times, so I'll go over here to this book, to the New Testament, or to something I think is more relevant for me today. And God says, don't overlook the blessings of reading what I've done in the past. Because you see, sometimes I would overlook reading the Old Testament just so I could read about what Jesus did in the New Testament. Because, I thought, well, Jesus said it or done it in the New Testament would be more valuable to me. But God says my word is relevant. From beginning to end, His word is relevant. When Jesus was tempted of the devil, He told him, He said, you don't live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. And I'm seeing it in a different way, is that the scriptures are, every word of the scriptures is nothing but God showing us His love and His promises. And we should listen to every word of it. Because in the Old Testament, God said it, He did it. It's not just about what Jesus did. It's also about what God and what time after time after time God did. Said it, did it, said it, did it. He says He will change us if we want to be changed. If we want to change who we are, we look to Jesus. We look to the cross. We look to see what Jesus would do. We change from the inside out. I may look different today, but I'm not different. Not in that respect. But now, I do remember yesterday saying something about taking some advice about seeing the difference I want to see in the world, starting with myself. I do want to change, not just my hair color, but who I am from the inside. To be someone who sees things and people for who they are and what God has in store for them. To truly see people as God sees people. Because He says you're worth everything, even His own Son. That makes you pretty special. And if you're special to God, that means you should be special to me. That's who I want to be. Someone who sees other people the way God sees them. I believe in you. I'm praying for you. Pray God has blessed you today. Have a great evening. God bless.